Everyone needs a safe place to talk. You're here today with Grant and Laurel Fishbook, and we are passionate about the messiness of authentic conversation. From hard questions to difficult responses, this is a risk worth taking. There will be a whole lot of laughs, maybe some tears, and everything in between. Join us as we continue the conversation to gain understanding about ourselves, others, and the Jesus we love. Hey everyone, I am here with most of the podcast family today. Gabe, who is our recording engineer in this, I was told not to put him in a box. So this is just for this scenario only.
Thank you,
Drew, our producer, you've heard his voice before on this. And Grant, as always, couldn't do this without you. So you're always here.
Happy to be here.
And Mariah is the only one not here who's Grant's executive assistant. And truly, she is the glue that keeps us all together. So we miss you, Mariah. But we have had so many amazing conversations on this podcast already, and we are going to dig a little deeper into some of those today. So I'll kick us off. I think one that just keeps rolling around in my mind the most is the conversation that we had with Gary Thomas about toxic people and when to walk away. This conversation and his book helped clarify the difference between healthy conflict and toxicity. Not only does he share great wisdom on when to walk away, but also how to walk away. So my follow-up question for all of you is, how do you recognize toxic people in your own lives, and have you had the courage to walk away?
Well, for me, recognize them, it's pretty simple. Are they adding value, or are they sucking the life out of the very moments that we're sharing together? It's as simple as that. And what I've found is that when people are a drain, like they literally drain the life out of you, I've spent way too much time and way too much energy trying to appease those people and stay connected to them. So I've had to draw lines and walk away. And as a people pleaser, that is an incredibly painful process. In fact, it may be one of the most painful processes that you have to go through to actually say, I'm going to walk away from this relationship. And the reason it's difficult is because you end up blaming yourself and going, I must have done something wrong. I have to be the source of the problem. What Gary helped me do is realize that there are people that are toxic and you can't do anything to fix or change that. It's their issue, not your issue. And to love yourself enough to say, I'm going to walk away from it, is really a statement of your own value and your own worth. And so I loved Gary's episode. It was one of my favorites because it was so practical. And we heard so much feedback from people saying, I never had the courage to cut off a relationship because I thought I couldn't. And then the one line that I heard over and over again was them saying, I didn't know Jesus walked away from relationships. But he did, for the right reasons. And he also did it the right way. So I love that episode.
How do you walk away as a pastor? You just ghost them? I'm not going to respond to your email.
Actually, what's interesting is most of them were actually coworkers. That's where the line had to come. It's like and it usually ended up being either a direct conversation or a phone call to say, this is no longer healthy. And I'm actually going to make a call. I know it's not healthy for me, and I'm telling you this is not healthy for you either. So I'm not entertaining these conversations anymore. So no more phone calls, no more emails. We're done.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you mentioned the how, Laurel. For me, some of those toxic people are family. And so it is really challenging you can't just walk away from, you can't completely walk away from family, or at least it feels that way. And so how I think in that podcast, what I capture was, walking away doesn't mean turning my back completely. Sometimes it means taking space or distance or boundaries. And I think that was really freeing for me and something I've been working on over the last couple of years. Hey, there's a point in this conversation we're having where I realize, whether I'm talking to my mom or somebody I'm close to, hey, this conversation is now at a point where neither of us are benefiting. And so I'm going to walk away from this conversation. Doesn't mean I'm going to walk away from you completely. And actually, it'd be better for me to walk away from this conversation and hold a little bit more of our relationship intact than to continue down this path, right? So for me, it's even in conversation setting boundaries. Hey, I don't think this is healthy for us anymore. And maybe we should, pick this up another time. And I think that's been really big. Giving myself the permission to create that space has been huge.
Yeah, I love, he commented on that too, that sometimes it's in a family dynamic, walking away simply means leaving the room. Like at a, family gathering at Christmas with the weird uncle. And
Sure.
he starts talking politics or whatever, that it just, it's going to get toxic. You can actually just leave the room. And so it doesn't always mean this hard drawn line where it's the end of a relationship. It's sometimes just exactly like you said, space.
Mm-hmm. A different way to navigate that situation, right, is stepping out of the place where it is uncomfortable and stepping into a place where it can be comfortable. Yeah, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well said. Okay, who wants to go next?
I do.
Okay. I do.
Grant's taking it.
I'm ready to talk.
Okay.
No. So one of my favorite episodes was one of the very first ones we did was with Emily Jameson and her prayer partner, Becca, who came through. Emily had preached here. We did one. It was called God, Me, or the Chili.
Yes.
And it was really the beginning of a journey into the depth of one of the most popular questions that we get. So Drew and I, we actually do this live YouTube show. It's we take questions from around the world. I would say by far the number one question we get asked has to do with hearing the voice of God. How do I know it's him? What do I put in place in order to hear that? Does God actually talk to me?
Yeah.
Is it him? Yeah. All of those nuances that go along with that. So Emily made a statement in that particular podcast where she said, it's important for us to understand that we do hear him. You have to start from the place of confidence. Because you do.
Yeah.
You're his sheep. And she told the story of a mentor and she was struggling with that. Am I really hearing the voice of God? And his statement was, you're one of his sheep. You do. You need to be confident in that.
Right.
So my question that goes along with that is, first of all, what is your primary struggle when it comes to hearing the voice of God? And what have you built in to build confidence? Not that anyone has ever arrived, but what have you built into your prayer time, your listening, that is increasing your confidence to know, yes, I know that was God speaking to me?
Okay, we're going to let Gabe go first because I feel like we all answered and then sometimes it leads to, but you know what? Actually, going back to my question sorry, Grant, but do you recognize toxic people in your life and do you know when to walk away? So here's why I have to go back to this a little bit because you are all very kind, gentle, loving people. And sometimes I wonder, do you actually see when it's toxic and then do you walk away or do you just like, okay, I'll give?
This is a good loop back. I like it.
This is a great loop back and one that's challenged me over time because regularly, as someone with a servant's heart, I do give and give and give. And I've kind of, I guess, I see it as when the roles in that interaction take on a space of discipleship or mentorship versus co-discipleship. So sometimes, there can be people that are a little bit difficult to work with, or they can be challenging or things like that. And
not necessarily toxic.
Not
just
necessarily
difficult.
toxic,
Yeah.
but can lean into that arena.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's character building in me to be in that midst, but sometimes it's not. And trying to navigate that for me is trying to figure out, is there something still beneficial that I'm gaining and contributing to this interaction, to this relationship? Or has it reached a point that it's become so draining that I'm no longer growing? I don't have the space to contribute. And is it calling out good in me? Is it calling out greatness in me, or is it starting to call out the things that I've tried to put away, right? The unkindness or lack of gentleness or compassion. And in some cases, there's been mentoring or discipling relationships where I've got to have very curt conversations with individuals that are kind of teetering at that edge and go, hey, so this was my experience from our interaction, and this is what I got on the other side of it. How does that make you feel? And then they would go, oh, I'm so sorry. I never realized that the way we were interacting was causing you to feel that way. That's not what I want. and then we can turn the paradigm, right? We can turn things on its head, but that's not always the case. Sometimes they just go, well, that's just who I am. And I go, okay, well, then I'm going to tell you who I'm going to be.
Well, and even when
like
they
that.
have that kind of response, right? You know they're not toxic, because I feel
Right.
like
Yep.
toxic people are also gaslighters. Like, it's your fault. Like, if you
Totally.
think something is
Yeah,
wrong
yeah.
in the relationship, they're like, what?
Yes.
Like, it's turned back on you right away.
Yeah.
So I think just the response alone in that kind of conversation
That's a big
is
indicator.
very
Uh-huh.
telling. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. So this is going to kind of bridge both these questions together. We were just talking. I sent you a podcast, and I said, Laurel, I really, really resonate with this podcast. I really want you to listen to it.
Yes.
And Laurel messages me back, and she goes, well, I don't understand why you resonate with this so much. She gives herself a lot of permission to be angry, and I don't think you've ever done that. And I was like, ouch. But you know what's funny? I've been thinking about that ever since you said it, and I realized how true that is. And I am really uncomfortable with being angry, and I've been processing, okay, why is that true? And a lot of it is I'd never really, growing up, had the permission to be angry. And to speak to the gaslighting piece, you know, if I would say, I'm angry, this is my experience, you made me feel this way, it was, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
And so I began to question my own anger, and anger became an unsafe feeling. And so I just stopped being angry, or at least I thought that I did. And what's interesting, you asked the question about hearing from God. And what is sort of the practice that has helped me grow in hearing from God. And part of it is realizing that I can bring my whole self into that conversation, that I can bring my anger into that conversation. I grew up, I grew up in this culture where you didn't bring the messy, hurt, ugly, angry, sad feelings to God. You brought all the nice stuff. You said, God, I know you're good. And then you walked away and everything was great. And that was really detrimental to my relationship with the Lord for a long time, because I didn't bring my anger or my pain or my hurt, because I thought, well, God doesn't want to hear that, or I shouldn't feel this way, or so it's really interesting how that anger piece has come full circle, and I'm really thankful. I think one of the things that has changed my prayer life and hearing from God is watching other people do it. So even watching you guys model, we've prayed together. I mean, every week before we go live, Grant and I pray together. I've prayed with the two of you in your house, and actually seeing other people really practice the things they talk about, because I think prayer is this word that we throw around so much culturally. Oh, I'll pray for you. Oh, I'm praying for you. Right. And it means it's so watered down. I feel like it means almost nothing. So then for me to see other people in the quiet of their own space actually lean into the thing that they say that they do, it was this shift. Oh, people really pray, and it really does do things. It really actually makes a difference. It's not just something we talk about. That was revolutionary for me. And it's only because I've been invited in and invited other people into that space. And that's been so beautiful for me.
That's cool.
Yeah. So to spin on that a little bit, my family experience growing up, we didn't talk a lot about our feelings or our emotions, and it wasn't safe. And I think that I dealt with a lot of anxiety in the midst of that, because I didn't know how to process life. I didn't have someone that I felt was a safe adult or grown up I could talk to about things, and I grew up very angry, and because of that. I mean, that kind of devolved into that, and I think some of the sweetest times that I had growing up, where I really got to speak and listen with God, was in those times where I'd find myself, I'd be alone and in my room on the other side of some situation that I didn't know how to deal with. And that's when I first started hearing the voice of God, and him speaking into my life and going, hey, this isn't my plan, or this isn't okay, or, and speaking into those moments. And I think that's where that confidence started for me, because I think God met me where I was at in the midst of some of those most difficult times early on.
I think for me too, it was definitely God God spoke even as a young girl. There's times where I so clearly remember hearing his voice in different situations, but I grew to learn that you hear his voice a lot more when you're asking questions and waiting
Yeah.
for answers,
Yeah.
and not just praying and then waiting for this profound umbrella statement to be spoken over you, right? So, really, almost every single day, I will go to Jesus with a question. Of sometimes it's smaller, significant, sometimes it's big, and it actually, what he says can change the trajectory of where I'm going, the direction I'm headed. And for those big ones, when I get an answer, I always write it down. I think it's so important. Write down what you hear from God. And I look for confirmation. Often it's through a friend or Grant. We'll be praying about the same thing together, and I'll be like, what did Jesus say to you?
Yeah.
Um, but just like conversation, I mean, I can sit here and stare at you and wait for you to talk, or I can ask you a question
Yeah.
and then wait with expectancy for an answer, right? So I think asking a question just up that expectancy. And yes, I know I'm going to hear from you. That's why I'm asking a question.
Yeah.
And then really being open to how he's speaking through to you, because it can be just this sense in your spirit, or it can be through your imagination. It can be a picture he brings to mind. Sometimes it's a text later in the day from a friend or a song. Like, there's so many ways God will reach out to you, but he will always make sure your questions are answered. So yeah. More?
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic.
All right, Drew, you're on.
Well, it was really fun as I was going back through the list of episodes. First of all, it blows my mind how much fast time passes. Like,
yeah.
I feel like we were just talking about this. And really, for everyone listening, I mean, to give you some context, this was one of the beautiful things that was birthed out of the COVID era. We wanted a way to have conversations in sort of this vacuum of conversation, right? Where we were all isolated. We wanted to be able to continue and pick up these conversations that we missed having, really.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things is seeing how many people and how many voices we've been able to represent and say, hey, your voice matters. But really, when we started this, Laurel, I remember you saying, I'm doing 10 episodes and we'll see what happens, right?
And somebody else better take over it by then. Yes.
And somebody else better take over, yeah. And so I was looking back, and we did an episode called Taking Back the Narrative. It was all of us and Braden. And I think what was so sweet about that, it was a huge kind of turning point. I feel like we were in the middle of, this was right in the middle of the mask, no mask, vaccine, I mean, it was literally right in the middle of everything being upended. But we were starting to have conversations about life on the other side, whatever the other side was. And I think the last 2-3 years have played out in so many ways that we could have never expected, and in a lot of good and a lot of challenging ways. But it was really cool because you started to see the tide sort of turn, where there was an optimism and there was this season, this podcast, the things that are coming out of this difficult, challenging season are actually really beautiful. And now it's happening. We're moving. You had this sense, even with the podcast, that like, oh, this is exciting. This is fresh. This is new. We're getting to talk to people who we may have not talked to before and have conversations we would have had. And so, I say a lot to say, I think that was a really pivotal moment just in the podcast, in the world, and even just for us to have that conversation. So my question is, now, 2-3 years later, what are the things that you've seen that are beautiful coming out of that difficult season? What are the things that you've experienced because of the challenges of COVID and the pandemic in that season that have changed your life in positive ways now?
I think our true colors always show when we're faced with challenge, right? And so COVID seemed like this massive sifter to me of who people really were. And you saw some people really stand up, and you saw others grumble. And for various reasons, you heard voices that spoke truth, and you heard voices that spoke out of fear. And So I think what it did for me is just really help me define who I want to be and how I want to be seen by others. And it made me take a closer look at who am I when the going gets tough? You know, can I really be who Jesus called me to be? And so for me, one of the most beautiful things I've seen is character refined. I think in some of my friends and leaders, and also in myself, it made me take a good hard look at what I thought was sure, what you're confident of. And when your whole world is shaken, you look at things differently and you're reminded again of who is in control. And that can be the most beautiful gift when life gets turned upside down.
Mm.
I would say for me, it was the value of finding out who could adapt quickly. And some of them were incredibly surprising at different times. Friendships that I thought would be solid for a lifetime, I found out were as quickly disposed as a disposable mask.
Yeah.
No pun intended, or maybe very intended. But some of those things just disappeared. I'm like, really, you're going to break relationship with me because of a view of a piece of cloth.
Yeah.
That's sad. But the hopeful side of it was the other things that showed up. And so one of them actually involves a guy who's sitting in this room right now, because there were moments during COVID when Gabe was on the soundboard at the back of an empty room. Johnny, who's also sitting with us today, kind of running some video stuff. Johnny was working a camera. And Scott was working a camera. They're on opposite sides of the room, and we were it. And Andy Tellman was a one-man band. He literally played by himself, and we're there. And I remember there were times when we were doing like multiple services, trying to keep things as normal as possible. And the only people I could rely on for any kind of feedback were Gabe, Johnny, and Scott. It's all I had, because it was just cameras. And we did funny things. Like I've preached to Beyonce because someone put a picture of her in one of the seats.
I was wondering, where's that going?
There were pictures of my parents up some week, pictures of my kids. Laurel was a fixture in the room, even though she wasn't there. And there were just moments like that. But it was you found out that there were relationships that like, I'm with you in this. Yeah. And it was a sacrifice in that moment. It wasn't just a job. It's like, we're going to get through this thing together. Not exactly sure how, but there were times I remember I'd look at the back of the room and Gabe would just put a hand up to represent somebody giving their heart to Jesus, because there were hands popping up, because we had a mechanism where people could raise a hand.
Yeah, in the chat.
And Gabe was the hands. He literally would put his hands up for me, and my heart would just jump. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this again. So those relationships went deeper. They got stronger. And we have stories we'll be able to tell our grandkids somewhere down the road. There was a time when we couldn't come into this room, and this is how it acted. So that's where my hope came from.
Well, and I think in the midst of that, I mean, I remember the meeting where we sat down and we went, well, we need to be streaming by Friday. And I said, well, I don't think we can do it. and if I recall right, you said, well, we're doing it. and I just thought,
we don't have a choice.
Okay, here we go. Let's do it.
Well, and I remember the first Sunday, we sort of celebrated. We broke the internet, right? So our stream. There were so many churches all over the world doing this thing together with us that it overwhelmed the system, and the whole thing crashed. And it was like, you couldn't help but be excited in some ways, because it was like, oh, we're doing something. This is a new frontier. Like, we're doing something we've never done before. And we've heard stories over the last couple of years of people in every continent and in countries all over the world. We baptized a guy from the UK. I mean, that was so cool to be able to see someone who discovered Jesus through us. All the way in the UK, and then got baptized. We showed it in service. I mean,
virtually,
it's incredible, right? So there's a lot of encouraging stuff, and it's cool because in the middle of it, and I think this is so true of life in general, in the middle of it, you have no idea what God is doing. In the middle of it, you're like, why am I preaching to an empty room? God, this is so hard. Like, there's all of the hurdles of like, I don't understand. And then you look back on the other side and you go, oh, but you really were working, and there really was some cool stuff that you were doing in the middle of it.
Well, and you learn to never say never, because I mean, things that we never dreamed we would be doing, we're doing. And it's good. All right, Gabe.
So So as I look at so many of these podcasts, I realize that I gleaned so many things from each one of them. I realized as like, just sitting in the room and hearing all of these conversations, there was always more than one nugget, more than one takeaway that resonated with me, where I went, oh, I could do that better, or oh, I didn't know that, or that explains so much about me or life or something I didn't know before, and so it was hard for me to pick one thing and go, okay, guys, what did you think about this? I think one that really stood out to me though is we did the one with after the flood, right? Where
with Gordon and Tracy.
With Gordon and Tracy,
yeah, he was a first responder.
Yeah. And this idea of standing up, this idea of being someone who in the midst of crisis, in the midst of adversity, is willing to be there, to be the one that's going to be present, right? Have you guys after that conversation seen places in life where you were then able to identify and go, oh, I think I can be the hero here? Not because you long to be the hero, but because you didn't see somebody else doing it.
I don't know. I wish I got to be the hero in things sometimes. I feel like I'm the person that sees something that needs to be changed or tweaked or fixed, or maybe something that's, I have to speak into situations where what I'm saying isn't always, I know it's not going to be well received, but I truly believe I'm called to say something. And so there are times like that in my life where, yes, I feel like sometimes it feels like the whole world is silent and I'm thinking, am I the only one that has to say this? So I definitely don't come across as the hero, that's for sure. But I know God's calling me to step into a situation that maybe others aren't at that moment. Yeah. So not always easy. But I know he uses what he asked me to say. He has.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know that I get to be that person that, and probably people don't want a blind person racing into a fire to rescue. I wouldn't find them. So there's that, But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like those. Do we actually act? Are we are we a first responder at heart?
Right.
Yeah. Well, but there's a piece though. I want to go back to this. I want to just got to hit this thing with Laurel, because who's hero?
Right.
Because even in those moments, we just came through a scenario where someone needed to stand up and say, this is wrong, and there needs to be a new and different strategy.
Yeah.
And Laurel was that person. And for the longest time, she was the only person who stood and rang a bell and said, this has to change. This has to change. It took me, admittedly, time to catch up with, okay, hold on. Where is this coming from? How does that? And then when the lights came on for me, I'm like, oh my gosh. So she may not have been a hero with the people that were interacting directly, but she was a hero in that moment because God was like, I need someone who's courageous enough to be a champion. Yeah. And she just did it. We just finished. I've watched it over the last couple of months, and it's been an incredible thing to see. So it may not be all that popular, but it's so unbelievably necessary.
I'm so intrigued by this idea because what I just was reflecting on, I think for me, there's so many episodes. I mean, we've talked about loss. We've talked about grief. We've talked about change. We've talked about, in so many episodes, we've covered this idea of showing up for people. And here's what's been interesting for me. I am always the action oriented. I want to get in. I want to do. I want to help. How can I? And listening to so many of these conversations, realizing, oh, what if you just sat down and listened to somebody? What if you didn't try to solve their problem? Mm-hmm. What if you didn't try to overextend yourself? What if you actually just sat down and said, what do you need from me? Mm-hmm. And that's what you've heard in so many of the episodes that we've done as we've navigated all these complex things. Hey, what advice do you have? 90% of the time we've heard on our episodes, just sit with someone.
Yeah.
When someone's in crisis, when someone's lost a family member, when someone's dealing with grief. And I'm admittedly bad at that. I want to jump in and fix and solve, and how can I help? How can I? And sometimes that person's like, I really just need you to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I don't need you to say anything. I mean, that's what we've heard so many times over and over is you actually don't need to say anything. Sometimes just sitting there
Yeah.
in the open chair is enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a hard learning curve for even people who are servant-hearted.
Sure.
To not serve, to not get in there and want to jump in and do everything.
Sure. Well, the paradigm shift is realizing that is serving.
Right.
So how this has become so ingrained for my life is, I've got this 6-year-old daughter, and I meet her and get her off the bus every day. Well, turns out navigating the life challenges of being a small person in a new, big, open world is a lot. And so I put a bench at the end of our driveway, and every day I get her off the bus and we go and we sit down. And like just yesterday, I asked her, I said, so do you want to tell me about your day? Or would you rather we just sit here and we just be?
Oh, I love that.
And she
I can
said,
see you and Clara doing that right now. Yeah.
and yesterday she said, Dad, let's just be. I don't want to talk about it.
Wow.
I said, okay, yeah, let's just be.
You just redefine for them what a bench is. For the rest of their lives, they will look at benches differently because it's a place where their dad sat with them. That is just the most beautiful thing.
So
love
can I
that.
ask you a question? Why you got emotional? We can't, well, maybe we can see it. But when you talked about just, Dad, can we just be? What hit you right there?
Why are we all crying?
Yeah.
I think it's so beautiful. This picture of a relationship with the Father, right? We talk about hearing the voice of God, and we think that prayer is just constantly talking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not. I think some of the most important prayers is when God calls us to just be.
Yeah.
Right. To sit with Him on the bench
Mm-hmm.
and just be, because we don't have the words or the energy
Mm-hmm.
to even go there. Right. But we just go, God, I have nothing. Here I am.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just be with me.
Yeah. I love that.
That reminds me, one of the most beautiful times I had with the Lord over the last season. It's just stuck with me. One day I was reading the parable of Jesus feeding the 5,000, and I read it just like I had read 100 times before. And I got stuck on this phrase, and it was totally Lord, and I couldn't figure it out. And it was when Jesus says, "Go sit down, there's plenty of grass." And I thought, why am I stuck on this, Lord? And I literally for days was like, why is this so significant? And then one day I read it again, and Lord said, look closer. And I realized the disciples were so anxious about not having enough food, not having enough provision. They were so anxious about, God, we're not going to have enough to feed people. We're not going to have enough food. And Jesus said, you know what there's plenty of? Grass. And what he was saying in that moment is there's plenty of space for you to just rest. I've got the provision figured out. I've got the food figured out. I don't need you to worry about where the provision's going to come from. I need you to rest. I need you to sit down. And as someone who is a chronic worrier and thinker and wants to have it all figured out, to realize what Jesus gave in that moment was the permission to just be was overwhelmingly significant for me. And I literally have, like, tangibly, I will go sit down in the backyard in the grass and just think about that passage now. And it totally changed my time with the Lord.
I'm so stealing that for the next time I preach that passage.
I know. I love that. I love that
I've
perspective.
never seen that way before.
So I think in answer or the response to your question is we don't have to be a firefighter to wear that first responder badge, right? Like it comes in all different shapes and sizes, and we can all be that person in a situation. So I
Just be
love that.
present.
Yeah, exactly.
So I love one of the episodes that I had to actually go back through the list and went, oh yeah, that one. Sam Middlebrook and Debbie Chavez. I believe we called it Live Like You're Dying because Sam almost did die during the pandemic. And Debbie lost her husband, Raul, during that time as well. And we spent whatever it was, an hour and 17 minutes talking about how their life changed because they had this face-to-face encounter with their mortality. Here's my question. My question is, how are you living like you're dying today? How are you making the most out of every opportunity God gives you today?
You know, this is really personal for me because my dad died at 64 and my brother died just months later at 42. And I made a promise to him that every year he didn't get the opportunity to live, I was going to live it for him. And I've taken that really seriously. So I feel like this is something that even though there's been physical challenges, whatever challenges in my life, for whatever reason, I feel like God's given me the grace and the strength to really keep that promise. And I feel like I do make the most of every day. It's the little things that I love. I will be the one that's dancing around my house with the music blaring and singing it, really loud off tune. And I think I can enjoy just those quiet moments. Grocery shopping can be fun. You always say that. You laugh at like
we have fun grocery shopping.
You just make I can be so excited. Everything is my favorite thing. This is my favorite dinner. This is my favorite color today. My favorite flower. And truly in the moment, it feels like it is. Like it is just, and I know that is a gift from God. And I feel like He has allowed me to keep that promise. And so I truly do love life. And not that there aren't days that are really hard. I've said that a million times on this podcast, that life can be so challenging. But I always know that God is on the other side of those challenges, with me in the challenges for sure. But also there's a happy end to those challenges. There's growth that comes with it, and refinement and healing in a lot of ways.
I think a big thing for me is I've traveled a fair bit, and I've been a lot of places, and found myself in the midst of a lot of new friends. I'll say lifelong friends for a very short window of time. People that I may or may not ever get to see again. And
but you carry them in your heart forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that.
And something I've adopted is never missing an opportunity to speak something over or into somebody that I've seen or recognized.
Yeah. You do that really well.
if that moment's fleeting, right? Because they may never have a chance to hear it again. And it might be the difference between how they see themselves or how they reconcile moments or life or things in general. And I think a lot of times, a lot of that is from God. A lot of that is God speaking in me and through me. And I guess I have this idea of who am I to stand in the way? Because on the other side of that, I grew up paralyzed by social anxiety, and I hated talking to people. I hated being in the midst of people and being open enough to share my feelings or let them see who I was or what was maybe inside. And it's been such a blessing for God to work so miraculously in my life that I'm on the other side of it. So who am I to have those little moments and keep that to myself?
Yeah. Can I throw an example of that? So Easter Sunday morning this past year, I'm thinking I've got to preach the perfect sermon. We've got to have the perfect altar call because we've got to create the perfect moment for people to come to Jesus. Yeah. And we're before the very first service, and Gabe comes backstage and literally stops me in my preparation and says, "Hey, Grant, this is not on you. This is not on you." And I went. It was like the burden of the whole day just disappeared. Yeah. in a matter of seconds because my friend showed up and spoke truth to me. It was beautiful. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this question, and it reminded me of a conversation that I had with a good friend. I feel really blessed. I was able to buy a house right before COVID, and that's been an incredible blessing. I bought a 3-bed, 2-bath house in the suburbs, and I feel like I've officially entered that stage of life. But I was talking to a friend and I was saying, I feel really grateful and blessed for the life that I have, and God has given me lots of great things, but I don't know if it's exactly where I want to be. And he said, well, what would your dream life look like? Where would you want to be? And I said, I don't know. I think I'd really like to be in a studio apartment downtown sometime, And he was like, well, why don't you do that? And it was this interesting thing. I sat there and I went, well, it's not the wise or logical or reasonable decision, right? And we dug through that a little bit, and I go back to the fuel economy. I grew up in that same mindset, the fuel economy. You do what is the most logical and wise and efficient decision. That's the thing that you do. And for the course of my life, I have, as much as I could, always made the wise and logical and efficient decision, even if it wasn't anywhere close to what I wanted. And so here I am, living a very blessed life in a 3-bed, 2-bath in the suburbs, constantly feeling like, I don't know if this is what I dreamed of or what I wanted. And my friend said, well, what's stopping you from making the unreasonable decision? Why don't you just, and not that it's bad or anything, but it was just like, what's stopping you from choosing the thing that you want to do? And I went, I don't know. Fear of what that means, of choosing myself. I mean, there's so much wrapped up in that. And so this summer, I found a studio apartment and I made the unreasonable decision and I did the thing, and I'm paying way too much in rent because that's how the economy is right now. But I moved in and I'm in a 250 square foot apartment with 4 dishes and 4 cups and 1 pan. And I'm probably the happiest I've ever been in my living situation.
I love that.
And so that's been really cool. And I think one of the things to talk about live like you're dying, when you look at people who live like they're dying, the thing they don't hold on to is things, and the thing they do hold on to is people.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things about having very little right now is just showing me your happiness is not dependent on how much stuff you have.
Yeah.
It's the time you spend with people. And so now I'm out every night having dinner with friends and meeting with people that I love and care about, and coming back to my 4 cups and 4 plates in a 250 square foot apartment, and I am so happy.
Huh.
And that's been really cool.
I love that. I love it. Okay, I think you're on next for.
Oh, it's me.
It's you. Yeah.
So one of my favorite episodes, I cried definitely a couple times, was the episode we did with Miles and Ryan.
Oh.
The Irvin brothers.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So powerful. The moment that got me the most was when you looked at Miles and you called him Pastor. You said, I know we have Pastor Ryan, but we also have Pastor Miles. And I think we all cried, but to watch his reaction, to see him acknowledge, oh, that's me. I get to put on that. I am a minister of the gospel. I actually get to reach people where they are. That was so special because you see so many people. We've had so many conversations with people who, for one reason or another, at some point, and I think we all have felt disqualified for some aspect, something in our life that prevents us from doing the full capacity of what the Lord has called us to do. So my question is, I know we all have something, whatever that something is, how do you overcome that fear that your story, your struggle, your pain, your perfectionism, whatever it might be, how do you overcome that fear and allow God to use that thing?
I think for me, my biggest fear can often be my eyes, my visual limitations, right? Because I don't see the tears. Like that's where Grant says, you're crying, you're emotional. I always feel so bad because I'm like, oh, I didn't see the tears fall. So then I sometimes don't have that empathy or, I don't speak in such a way because I don't see all those visual cues that most people do in conversation. So I think sometimes I'm scared to step into conversations or step into situations simply because it can be embarrassing if I get it wrong or I've walked up to the wrong people. I've gotten in the wrong cars. I've walked into kitchens and restaurants thinking it's the the restroom. So I think it's just making everything into a faith journey. Going, okay, Lord, I might really embarrass myself here, but you've taught me how to laugh, and we've had a lot of laughable moments because I've gone and bulldozed ahead into whatever situation. Um, but what has bridged the gap for people is I am coming with so many imperfections, and it's open doors because they don't feel like life has to be perfect to have a conversation. They can see me, fumble and bumble along and we start talking and they start sharing about their different challenges in their life. So I think for me it's just been a faith journey going, Lord, you've got to help wipe this fear away and let me step in and not look at, what I can't do in my own strength, but what I can do in yours.
Yeah, it's a cheesy line, but it works. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And that has been beautiful for
That's
me.
a good line. I don't even know that I've heard that.
Really? Yeah.
I like that.
It's old, it's been around, but it's true.
Uh,
And in your weakness, God is made strong. And I'm just learning I'm learning how to embrace weakness, not as a defect all of the time, but it's okay to simply not have to have every piece together. It's the anti-perfectionism drive in my life that's going on. And I can't commentary on it a whole lot because I am still so much in process. It's not even funny, but calling out things like that in other people and just simply saying, I see this in you. Like, Miles, I know your brother's a pastor, but bro, you're a reverend too. I mean, you're in the baptismal tank every time we turn around because of the people that you're loving to Jesus. So I love calling that out in people. And I love the fact that I got people in my life who call it out in me too.
Yes. How do you, whatever the plight or circumstance that you feel like is the difficult, messy part of your story, how do you overcome the fear of letting God use that to speak to people?
I think that's every day for me. I realized that coming from my youth, I didn't have a lot of self-worth, a lot of value in me or my ability or my skills, or that I had anything to offer. And I realized that early on, I felt trapped. And it's only in the midst of other people in community that they spoke into me and they began to like peel back those layers and spending time in the presence of God that I learned that I do have value. I do have skills. I have things that I am capable of. Most of them I didn't know how to do before we started, and I, foolishly or not, said yes, and I found myself going through it, and by the strength of God on the other side of it, stronger in character and ability. And so saying yes to things I don't know how to do has just helped me learn how to do it. And so I say yes unless I feel the Holy Spirit telling me to say no. Especially if I don't know how to do it, right? I've never led a trip to Honduras.
But he's doing it,
But
and it's
he's
happening
doing it.
in the
But we'll
fall.
do it.
So if anybody wants to go with him,
So I'm
this
excited,
is the
right?
sales pitch. Yes, that's exciting.
Great opportunity.
Right.
I think it's so interesting. Here's what's so interesting. When you share your struggle, I mean, for all of us, I feel this way about all three of you. When you guys share your struggles, I'm like, oh, like, Gabe, you bring so much to the table. I would never expect that to be a struggle.
Sure.
For you, right? Well, Laurel, you navigate so well. I would never like you just look at people and I think we're almost critic in ways, and I think you look at people and go, wow, that really surprises me because I don't see you that way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and these days I don't see myself that way.
Yeah.
That's good.
But I think it's more because I found myself in healthy community,
Yeah.
and I let them speak into me. So
The last podcast with Deborah was unbelievable.
Oh my.
I am still soaking in that. There was so much that she said that I want to listen to it again and again and again, because this is somebody who went through so much in life, a red carpet, life looks perfect person. And behind the scenes, her life was falling apart, and it just shows how God came through. So
yeah.
again, I would encourage anybody who hasn't listened to that one to listen, because it'll change you. There's just things you hear. I mean, so many people that have listened to it already said they cried through the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because she
I cried through the whole thing.
but she grabs every emotion, I think, from sad to angry to joy and hope, and every emotion is experienced in that podcast and in that conversation, and it's beautiful. So
I just went back and listened again, and this was the quote. She introduces herself, no big deal. She says, I've been on tour with Beyonce and Justin Timberlake, and she just name drops all these people, and you're like, that's pretty cool. And then she says, but those aren't the things I'm talking about anymore. And I was like, wow, those aren't the things that changed my life. Those aren't the people that invested in me. Those are, and that was so cool to kind of culturally look at someone who we would go, oh, you've got it. You've really got it going on.
yeah.
It's like, that's not the stuff that matters, right? It just makes you realize, man, it's the people you spend time with that you actually do life with that make. Because so many of her stories of God transforming her life came from, I sat with this person, my mom prayed for me, my dad prayed for me, my friend, like so many of her stories were people that pursued her and prayed for her and walked with her through really difficult things. And so, man, it's not the success or the accolades or all of the cool things, it's the people. And I think we've come back to that so many times.
And realizing it's a daily challenge. Like at the very end, the question was, she wrote a song about
You're worth it.
Or you're worth it, right? And I said, do you still ever question that though? Or kind of have you reached where, yeah, I'm worth it? And she goes, every single day. And I think we need to realize, this is something we need to reclaim every day. The enemy doesn't all of a sudden just stop working. Like he's going to always keep knocking you down. And so it doesn't mean you're falling behind or you're failing. It just means you just always got to get back up again and keep trying and really keep declaring who you are. So I love that. I love this conversation. It's been fun, and there's going to be more of it. I am somebody who loves change, and it might be for that reason that we are going to change up the format of this podcast a bit. We don't know exactly what it's all going to look like. There will still be guests at different times, but it's going to be a little more free-flowing and I think just a little more conversational. So who knows? We're going to take a couple months hiatus here and then come back in fall. And it will probably be a surprise to us all as to what that actually looks like. But it's going to be a fun ride. I know that. And it's going to be great conversation. So make sure you listen to the episodes you miss and or have missed, and then come back in fall for more.
Thanks again for joining us on this episode of Continuing the Conversation. If you're enjoying the content of the podcast, please hit the subscribe button or leave us a review. We would absolutely love to hear from you. For more info about CTK or message content from Pastor Grant, please visit ctk.church. We sincerely hope you join us again next time as we continue the conversation with Grant and Laurel Fishbook.